Picture this. It's June 1462. You're standing at the edge of what looks like a forest. But as the morning fog lifts, you realize those aren't trees. They're people. Thousands of them, impaled on wooden stakes, arranged in perfect rows that stretch further than your eyes can see. This is what stopped the most powerful army in the world, dead in its tracks. Not cannons, not strategy, just pure, calculated horror. But here's what nobody tells you about monsters. They're not born, they're made. And the story of how this particular monster was created, it's way more terrifying than anything he ever did.
Let's rewind 20 years. Romania, 1442. There's an 11-year-old boy named Vlad. He's got 2 parents, 2 brothers, and absolutely no idea that in exactly 3 weeks, his entire world is about to implode. His father, Vlad the Dragon, yeah, that's actually his name, has just made what he thinks is a brilliant political move. He's cut a deal with the Ottoman Empire, the superpower of the medieval world. The deal is simple. He gets to keep his throne. In exchange, he hands over his 2 youngest sons as guests, which is medieval speak for hostages. Now imagine being that kid. You're 11 years old. You're ripped away from your home, your family, everything you know. And you're delivered to the very empire your people have been fighting against for generations.
Here's where the story gets psychologically fascinating. The Ottomans didn't throw Vlad in a dungeon. That would have been too simple. Instead, they did something far more insidious. They gave him the best education money could buy. Fine clothes, private tutors, training in military strategy, philosophy, multiple languages. On paper, it looked like privilege. But make no mistake, this was psychological warfare at its finest. Think about it. You're a kid who's been taken hostage, and your captors are treating you like royalty. But here's the catch. You're watching them perfect the art of empire building through fear. You're seeing public executions designed not just to punish criminals, but to traumatize entire populations into submission. And the whole time, you know that your father sold you out to save his own throne. That's the kind of betrayal that doesn't just hurt, it fundamentally rewires your brain. While Vlad's younger brother Radu adapted to Ottoman life, even became friends with the Sultan's son Mehmet, Vlad refused to bend. He was defiant, rebellious, and according to Ottoman court records, he was punished for it, frequently. We don't know all the details. History's pretty quiet about exactly what happened behind those palace walls. But we do know this. Something inside young Vlad didn't just break. It crystallized into something else entirely. Modern psychologists would probably call it a persecution complex mixed with an obsessive need for control. But Vlad, he was taking notes. Every punishment he endured, he studied it. Every torture technique he witnessed, he memorized it. He was building a mental arsenal, piece by piece, waiting for the day he could use it.
In 1448, after 6 years of captivity, Vlad finally returns home to Romania. He's 17 years old. He survived. He should be celebrating. Instead, 2 months later, his father is assassinated by rival nobles, the same boyars who played both sides between the Ottomans and Hungarians for their own profit. His older brother, buried alive. Vlad is completely alone. No family, no allies. Surrounded by the very men who murdered his father and brother. And here's the moment that changes everything. He doesn't just want revenge. That would be too simple, too human. No, Vlad wants to remake the entire world in the image of his trauma. He wants to take everything the Ottomans taught him about fear and refine it into something even they had never imagined. But first, he has to wait. For 6 more years, Vlad lives in exile, plotting every single move.
1456. Vlad finally seizes the throne with Hungarian backing. He's 25 years old. And his first official act as prince? He throws a coronation feast. He invites all the boyar families, the same nobility who orchestrated his father's murder and buried his brother alive. Hundreds of them show up in their finest clothes, thinking they're there to pledge loyalty to the new prince, maybe do some political maneuvering. The great hall is decorated, wine is flowing, music is playing, everything seems normal. Then right in the middle of the feast, Vlad stands up and asks one simple question. How many princes of Wallachia have you lived through? The older boyars, they start bragging. 7, 10, 12 different rulers. They're proud of their political survival skills, their ability to outlast any prince who sat on the throne. Vlad smiles, and then he gives an order that changes everything.
Every boyar who answered is arrested on the spot. But here's where you see the methodical mind at work. Vlad doesn't just execute them. He separates them into two groups based on age and health. The older ones, the architects of his family's destruction, they're impaled immediately outside the palace walls, not quickly. The method is calculated to avoid vital organs, ensuring they die slowly over hours or days. The younger, stronger boyars and their families, they get a different fate. They're stripped of their fine noble clothes and force-marched 50 miles north to the ruins of a mountain fortress. There, they're given a choice that isn't really a choice. Rebuild the castle with your bare hands or die. For months, they haul stones up the mountainside. They work until their hands bleed, until their silk clothes rot off their bodies, until they collapse from exhaustion. Most die during construction. The survivors are never the same. Vlad has effectively erased the old nobility and replaced them with a new class who owe everything to him and live in absolute terror.
That was just domestic politics. What Vlad does next sends shockwaves across empires. In 1459, Sultan Mehmed II, yes, the same Mehmed who was Vlad's childhood companion in captivity, sends envoys to Romania demanding the annual tribute Vlad's father had agreed to pay. The demand comes with an insult. Vlad must present himself personally in Constantinople to renew his oath of loyalty. The envoys arrive expecting negotiation, maybe some political theater. What they get is a preview of hell. When they enter Vlad's court, they refuse to remove their turbans, a genuine religious custom in Ottoman protocol. Vlad asks them to explain their tradition. They do, probably relieved that he seems interested rather than offended. Vlad nods thoughtfully. Then he says, "I respect a man who honors his faith so completely. Let me help you honor it forever." He orders his guards to nail the turbans directly to their skulls. Think about the precision of that cruelty. He doesn't kill them. He mutilates them in a way that ensures they'll survive the journey back to Constantinople. Barely. They become walking messages, their screams echoing across the countryside as they flee.
Now let me tell you something most people don't understand about impalement. It wasn't just execution. It was engineering. The common image, a stake driven straight through the torso, would kill almost instantly. But that defeats the entire purpose. Vlad's method was far more sophisticated. Based on historical medical analyses, here's how it actually worked. The victim was positioned carefully. The stake, rounded at the tip and thoroughly oiled, was inserted at a specific angle designed to miss all major organs and blood vessels. Then the victim was raised upright and gravity did the rest. Over hours or even days, their own body weight would force the stake gradually through their torso. Why this method? Because Vlad understood something that modern psychological warfare experts confirm. Witnessing prolonged suffering is exponentially more traumatizing than witnessing quick death. But the physical act was only one component. The real genius, if we can use such a perverted word, was in the staging. Stakes at different heights based on rank, peasants near the ground, nobles higher. This created a grotesque visual hierarchy. And the locations? Public squares, major roads, city gates, anywhere that would maximize visibility. Because Vlad understood that one impalement witnessed by 100 people would create 100 storytellers, each telling 100 more.
Sultan Mehmed II has finally had enough. By early 1462, Vlad hasn't just refused tribute, he's launched brutal raids deep into Ottoman territory. In one campaign, he personally claims to have killed over 23,000 people. He even keeps a body count. Mehmed, the man who conquered Constantinople at age 21, who commands the most powerful military on earth, decides to personally handle the Romanian problem. He assembles an army of between 60,000 and 90,000 men. Conservative estimates put it at triple Romania's entire military-age male population. This isn't an invasion, it's an extermination. Vlad has maybe 20,000 to 30,000 men total, many of them peasant conscripts with minimal training. A conventional battle would be a massacre. So Vlad does what he's been planning since childhood. He refuses to give them a conventional battle.
As the Ottoman army enters Romania, they find nothing. Empty villages, poisoned wells, burned fields. Every potential source of food and water has been systematically destroyed. Vlad has ordered his own people to abandon their homes and retreat into the forests and mountains, taking their livestock with them. He's willing to sacrifice his own country to win. The Ottoman supply lines stretch longer and longer. And then the night raids begin. These aren't typical skirmishes. Vlad has trained specialized units in guerrilla warfare. Small groups, maybe 50 to 100 men, strike Ottoman camps in the dead of night. They kill sentries, set fires, and disappear before any organized response can form. They target supply wagons, pack animals, ammunition stores. The goal isn't to defeat the army. It's to make them paranoid, exhausted, and demoralized. For weeks, the Ottoman soldiers march through a dead landscape where every shadow might hide an enemy. They're hungry, they're terrified, and they haven't even seen Vlad's main forces yet. The masterpiece comes on the night of June 17, 1462. Vlad has learned from captured prisoners that Sultan Mehmed himself is camped near the capital with his personal guard, the elite Janissaries. This is an opportunity that will never come again. Vlad personally leads a force of about 10,000 men in what becomes known as the night attack. Under cover of darkness, they infiltrate the massive Ottoman camp. They're dressed in captured Ottoman uniforms, they speak enough Turkish to cause confusion, and they have one objective: kill the Sultan. Contemporary accounts describe absolute chaos. The Romanians set fire to tents, stampede horses, and fight their way toward the Sultan's pavilion. They come within yards of Mehmed himself. Some historians believe Vlad and the Sultan briefly made eye contact across the burning camp. But the Janissaries hold, forming a defensive circle around their leader. After hours of brutal close-quarters combat, Vlad realizes he can't break through. He orders a retreat, and his men vanish back into the night as suddenly as they appeared. The Ottoman casualties are relatively light, maybe 2,000 killed. But the psychological damage is catastrophic. The Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, in the middle of his own army, nearly died.
And then they reach the capital, and they see what Vlad has been preparing for them. Imagine you're an Ottoman soldier. You've been marching for weeks through scorched earth. You're hungry, exhausted, jumpy from constant night raids. You haven't seen the enemy in days. As you approach the Romanian capital, the smell hits first. If you've ever smelled a dead animal rotting in summer heat, multiply that by thousands, then add the sweet, sickening odor of decomposing human flesh. It's so thick you can taste it. Then you see the stakes. The first one, then 10, then 100. Then you realize there is no end. They stretch to the horizon in every direction. Historical accounts say the field extended for nearly 2 miles in length and over half a mile in width. Modern historians debate the exact number. Ottoman sources claim 10,000, Romanian sources claim 20,000. The truth is probably somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 impaled bodies. But here's what makes your skin crawl. This wasn't random. The stakes were arranged in precise, geometric patterns, concentric circles radiating out from the capital, height-ordered rows. In some sections, they formed star patterns visible from elevated ground. Vlad had spent weeks, possibly months, preparing this. Some of the bodies had been dead for weeks, others had been impaled more recently, and some, according to multiple sources, were still alive. Sultan Mehmed II, the man who conquered Constantinople, who had ordered his own share of massacres, reportedly stopped his horse and stared in silence for several minutes.
Within days, Mehmed orders a general retreat. He leaves a contingent under Vlad's younger brother Radu to continue harassing Vlad, but the Sultan himself withdraws with the main army. The most powerful military force in the world had invaded a tiny country with overwhelming numbers and been turned back, not by military defeat, but by sheer psychological warfare. Vlad the Impaler had won. Against impossible odds, using nothing but calculated terror, he defeated an empire. But here's the tragedy nobody talks about. He couldn't turn it off.
You'd think defeating the Ottoman Empire would make Vlad a hero in Christian Europe. In some ways, it did. The Hungarian king and the Pope praised his defense against the Ottoman threat. But here's what they didn't understand. The methods that defeated the Ottomans didn't stop with the Ottomans. Vlad used them on everyone. By late 1462, he's impaling Romanian merchants for price gouging. He's impaling boyar suspected of disloyalty based on rumors. He's impaling entire villages for minor infractions. The tool he forged to defeat a superior enemy has become his only tool for everything. He's addicted to terror. It's the only language he speaks anymore. His political position deteriorates rapidly. His allies abandon him. His own people begin to fear him more than they fear the Ottomans. By November 1462, just months after his greatest triumph, Vlad is forced to flee into Hungarian territory. And here's the bitter irony. He's imprisoned by his supposed ally, King Matthias of Hungary. The charges remain murky to this day. Some say Matthias fabricated evidence. Others suggest Vlad had simply become too much of a liability. He spends 12 years in Hungarian captivity, not the brutal imprisonment of his Ottoman youth, but comfortable house arrest. He marries a Hungarian noblewoman, has children. By all accounts, he's a model prisoner. But you have to wonder, what goes through a man's mind when he's caged for a second time in his life? When everything he fought for, everything he became, led him right back to captivity.
In 1476, opportunity returns. Romania has devolved into chaos under weak rulers. With Hungarian and Moldavian backing, Vlad reclaims his throne in November 1476. He's 45 years old. He's been away for 14 years. He's had time to reflect, to maybe change, to become something other than the monster he created. He has maybe 2 months to rule. In December 1476 or January 1477, Vlad is killed in battle against an Ottoman force near Bucharest. The circumstances are murky. Some say he was killed by his own men, either through treachery or because they mistook him for an enemy in the chaos.
Others say he was overwhelmed by Ottoman soldiers. What's certain is the aftermath. His head was cut off, preserved in honey, and sent to Sultan Mehmed in Constantinople as proof of death. After everything, the terror, the impalement, the psychological warfare, Vlad ended up as a trophy displayed for mockery in the capital of the very empire he fought his entire life.
His body was allegedly buried at Snagov Monastery on an island in Romania. Excavations in the 1930s found a tomb, but it was empty. To this day, no one knows where Vlad's actual remains are. So what do we do with this story? In Romania, Vlad is celebrated as a national hero, a brutal but effective leader who stood against impossible odds and preserved independence. There are statues of him. His face appears on tourist merchandise. To the rest of the world, especially after Bram Stoker's 1897 novel borrowed his name, Vlad became synonymous with vampirism and supernatural evil. But here's the real horror and the real lesson. Everything Vlad did was human, painfully, terrifyingly human. He wasn't born a monster. He was created by a system that taught him power comes through terror, that survival requires absolute ruthlessness, that empathy is weakness. And he took those lessons and refined them to their logical extreme. The forest of the impaled wasn't madness. It was applied psychology. The night attacks weren't random violence. They were precision military strategy. Every act of cruelty was a calculated move in a larger game. And here's what should keep you awake at night. It worked. Against impossible odds, using nothing but calculated fear, Vlad turned back an empire. He proved that terror, properly weaponized, could accomplish what conventional armies couldn't. The question isn't whether Vlad was evil, that's obvious. The question is, what does it say about human nature that this method was so effective? What does it say about us that trauma can reshape a person so completely that they become the very thing that traumatized them? And what other monsters are we creating right now in systems we don't even recognize as traumatic until it's too late?
History's darkest chapters aren't just about what happened. They're about understanding why it worked. And that's the knowledge we can't afford to forget. Because the next Vlad, he might not be using wooden stakes, but the psychology, that never changes.